here's what I know. Someone's going to have to start to fight for Nebraska, all right? So I'm here to fight for Nebraska. And finally, the team grows up. It's what people always ask me about year 3. Finally, the team grows up, and they're like, well, I got to go make the play.
It's time to join the Husker Huddle with Nick Handley and Grant Hansen.
Hey, welcome into the Husker Huddle alongside Grant Hansen. I'm Nick Handley. We are happy that you're with us. Happy Valley. No? Okay. Anyway, Nebraska, it was going to be a lofty goal to get that one to land, and I knew it wouldn't. But hey, you know what? Dad jokes never fail. We're excited about this one because even though it's Nebraska-Penn State week, it's not the Nebraska-Penn State week that we thought we'd have maybe at the beginning of the season, because we thought, boy, Nebraska could potentially be trying to play themselves into the college football playoff mix if they were one of those teams. But we definitely thought going into the season that Penn State would be one of those teams.
Oh, yeah.
And Penn State is not. But this still has that feeling of a big game. You're playing under the lights in Happy Valley. So we're excited to talk all about this one with you on Husker Huddle Podcast. But before we get started, I want to let you know what's coming up on the show. We're going to talk to Brian Christopherson of Husker 24/7 Sports Talk Football and Hoops with BC. And one of the more impressive and more consistent players in the trenches on that defensive side, and he and his defensive line mates in that front seven are going to be tasked with a big chore this weekend and trying to slow down the Penn State running game. Elijiah Jeudy, Grant had a chance to talk to him.
Yeah, Philly native too. Don't leave that out.
That's right. So kind of an appropriate time to talk to him as well. Maybe you'll get some questions in about that. I don't know.
I'm not going to promise anything.
I haven't seen it, or maybe I have. I don't know. But again, we always appreciate you checking the podcast out. There are many ways that you can get involved. You can join the Mailbag, ask us a question by just hitting us up on email. It is huskerhuddle@myboomerradio.com. And Grant, of course, always ways that you can engage with the show.
Of course, we really invite you to like and subscribe to our YouTube page, Performance Podcasts. And then if you're listening to us on Spotify or through Apple Podcasts, a review would be welcome from us. So if you have that in your heart this holiday season, to send that our way, we'd certainly appreciate it. And if you could tell a friend, too. Tell a friend about the show. We thank you in advance for those of you who are able to do that for us.
It's more of a regular Omaha Steaks Prime Cuts because we do actually have player availability coming out of the bye week. Yes, Omaha Steaks, of course, your go-to for game day. From sizzling steaks to all of your tailgate favorites, they've got you covered. Omaha Steaks, proud partner of Nebraska Athletics. Here is this week's Omaha Steaks Prime Cuts.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a blessing. They've been doing a great job of just pushing, me out there. But it's not just me. Like I said, there's a lot of people that play a part in that. My teammates that have helped me get to that point. So it's been amazing. It's been pretty fun.
I think last game was 50 runs, 13 passes. Yeah, no, that's exactly that. I showed it to our team yesterday. I'm like, hey, guys, 50 runs. Now, to be fair, some of those runs were quarterback dropping back and then running the ball, right? We are one of the top pass defenses in the country. We are one of the top, all these different things. But we struggle versus the run. And they are going to come out and run the football. So I look at it as what a wonderful opportunity for our guys to go out there and conquer things that have bothered them. And so we can defend the run. They're just very good at it too. So a lot of credit to them. They had 100 and some yards through 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter, Penn State went out and I think they had 130 yards in the fourth quarter. So it'll come down to our ability late in the game to defend the run.
We were concerned with the number of snaps and the number of touches early. We had that conversation with game 1 too much and then game 4 too much. Well, is it? Because that's, it doesn't look like it is to me. I mean, the dude just keeps getting stronger, and whatever we need to do to get the ball to him. One, we're going to do that, but 2, he can handle that.
We're a good football team and a good defense. There's a lot of things that, it's low-hanging fruit right now to say that we're struggling to stop the run, but we're one of the best pass defenses in the country, one of the best teams of not letting people in the red zone. We don't give up explosive plays. There's a lot of things that we're doing. We haven't given up a 400-yard rusher. We haven't let a team score on us in the first drive of the game. So there's some things that we're doing well, but obviously in a game like this, we know and understand that it's going to come down to our players embracing that they're going to try to run the football, and we have to stop the run. And that means by any means necessary. If that means me going out there as the 12th guy to make the tackle, I'll do that. But that's just what it's going to take.
That is our Prime Cuts, brought to you by Omaha Steaks, your go-to for game day, from sizzling steaks to all of your tailgate favorites. They've got you covered. Omaha Steaks, proud partner of Husker Athletics. A lot of Emmett Johnson conversation this week. Also, a lot about what this Nebraska team is going to be embarking on in State College. It's one thing to play Penn State on a down season.
Right.
Doing so maybe at 11 a.m. or 2:30. But you got two factors here. Under the lights at Beaver Stadium, it's tough to win there regardless of a team's fortunes. You also have senior day going on. But, Grant, this is why I have felt a little uneasy about this game, not just of what Penn State showed against Indiana in damn near pulling off that victory against a great college football team in Indiana, but I was, and I know you and I talked about this last week, really curious to see how Penn State would respond on the road in East Lansing, a Sparty team that's pesky enough that if you are massively hungover from that loss that you had to Indiana, that Michigan State could do enough to exploit that. I give Penn State this new coach, I shouldn't say new coaching staff, but interim coach, and you've got all of those guys still playing for a lot. They showed up against Penn State or against Michigan State. They close it out in the fourth quarter. I think that said a lot about this team's vested interest in this season. They're going to be ready for this Saturday night game, and more importantly for Penn State, I think they've gone back to an identity that has made them very dangerous, mainly running the football, making things easier on their redshirt freshman quarterback.
Well, look, I think 28-10, yes. They did enough within the fourth quarter, but that was a 14-10 game heading into the fourth. So it was still a one-possession game between those two teams. Penn State, credit where credit's due, made enough plays. It's not like they blew them out. So I think there is a balance to be struck there that maybe necessarily hasn't been in a lot of the discussions surrounding this game this week, especially as it pertains to Penn State's performance against Michigan State, where people are saying, 28-10, Nebraska didn't do that against Michigan State when they played in Lincoln.
The transitive properties.
Oh boy, So look, it's an impressive victory. They did it by basically choking the life out of Michigan State with a long touchdown drive that they had in the fourth quarter to really put that game out of reach and make it a two-possession game. So they deserve credit for that. But it was a one-possession game heading into the fourth quarter, which, look, I think I feel pretty safe saying that the next two are going to be like that for Nebraska.
100%.
I wouldn't, this line open, we'll talk about that later on in the show too. The line opened at 10.5 roughly in favor of Penn State, which I thought was way larger than I expected. It's come down a bit since then. We'll tell you later where both of us kind of feel like it should be. But I thought Penn State would be favored. I didn't foresee them being favored as much as they are currently. And I don't foresee them winning by as much as they are currently favored.
This Penn State team, they didn't get all of a sudden just sledgehammered with injuries. Now, one of the most important injuries that took place, though, was Drew Aller. And I think with Drew Aller being out, it definitely changed things up. Remember, they started to hit the struggle bus with a healthy Drew Aller. So it wasn't all of a sudden he got injured and their fortunes just completely changed. They lost a tough one to Oregon, and then this just inexplicable back and forth shootout with UCLA. And then it was the Northwestern game that they're in a dogfight where they ultimately ended up towards the end of that game lost Drew Aller. So they were already struggling with what was considered to be a damn good roster. But in those games, in that Indiana game, you're constantly reminded of why people were so high on this team when it does come to their roster. But when I look at this matchup in particular with Nebraska, what they've done defensively, especially for a team that is just pretty solid, it's nothing that jumps off the page. They've got guys at each level that can hurt you. Essentially, the guy that I look at more than anybody is Amari Campbell, who's been just phenomenal, but also Dennis Sutton. He wreaks havoc in the backfield. But they've been pretty stingy. But then when you look at the numbers, what Nebraska has been a little more struggled on when it comes to stopping the run, Penn State hasn't been explosive in stopping the run as well. They're right around 150, allowing around 150 per game. This game just has my attention more than anything because it's a roster that when you look at it, there was a lot of high praise. And with the exception of losing the most important position on the field and quarterback, this is still pretty much the same team. That's why I think a lot of people are still very nervous, uneasy about, really going all in on like, oh, Nebraska caught a major break.
Right. Yeah, the other part of this that intrigues me, what we heard a lot about and we still hear a lot about, and it's because it's probably true, TJ Lateef is very, very calm and a calming presence. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He doesn't necessarily become overwhelmed by all these outside factors that are around him. And granted, given that he was on the road 2 weeks ago at UCLA, but that was his home state, 15 minutes from his hometown, in a venue that had 25,000 Husker fans in it out of 40,000 people.
Right.
So it's easy, yes. It's easier. It's harder than it being calm at home, probably running your offense against UCLA, but it's easier than what he's going to face this week with Penn State. So can he remain calm under pressure this week? Even if, yes, it's not a Penn State type of crowd that Nebraska probably thought he would see at the beginning of the year in terms of how bought in the fans are going to be. But the players are certainly not giving up. And these are all hyper-competitive people. And even at the NAIA level, you have guys that are on senior day. Everybody wants to win on senior day. Yeah. I mean, you can't get to this level of athletics and be this, you can't achieve at this level in athletics and not be hyper competitive.
Yeah.
So, Penn State is not going to roll over. That's obvious. They can still get to bowl eligibility, which I'm sure is front of mind for a lot of guys. So,
Nebraska and Rutgers remain on their schedule.
So intriguing. And it all comes down to who runs the ball better this week.
Yeah, and
right.
That's
like
great,
you can if you're Nebraska, you're going to give up some runs. There's no way. And you heard Matt Rule talk about it, 50 runs against Michigan State. I think you could expect something similar this week, and I think Nebraska knows that. And you also know that if they run the ball that many times and you have a guy that is just off, 100 yards off Saquon Barkley's and Katron Allen is 100 yards off Saquon Barkley's career rushing record. He is that close. You're going to give up some plays. Like you will give up some runs this week because how often they're going to run the ball just by that virtue of that alone, but also the fact that they're very, very talented and it's what they do well. It's the matter of, can you run the ball better, or can you make enough equalizing plays, whether that's forcing turnovers, negative plays on early downs, or whatever you need to do to make it so that, look, yes, we gave these things up, but we did enough to win the game, right? That's sort of been the identity, which is not super sexy if you're thinking about identities of the defense. Like the greatest defenses in NFL and college football history, you don't think of the 85 Bears or the Purple People Eaters and think, well, we did enough to win the game.
Right.
But that's sort of what Nebraska's identity has become this year is, look, we gave some things up in these areas, but we did enough to win. And so Nebraska will have to make those key plays on defense this week, whether that's game-changing interceptions, forced fumbles, stands in the red zone, turning touchdown drives into field goals, whatever you need to do to win this game. And then you're going to have to, on the other side of the ball, limit Penn State's possessions and make the most of the ones that you get because you're not going to get that many.
Right. And I think the quarterback storyline in this one is very interesting because Ethan Gruckenmeyer, who's now making his fifth start, and if you go all the way back to where his first start was, I'm sure there's been a lot of growth right there. TJ Lateef is obviously just getting things going in his college football career. So there's a little bit of difference there where each one of these players is. But I think both of them are obviously going to benefit from what is going to be their offensive coordinator and offensive identity of this game and every game going forward, and that is being able to lean on the run. For Penn State, they can do so with Allen and Singleton. And Singleton is very good, very capable. He had a great game against Indiana. But that was also interesting enough, in Penn State's toughest game in the last few, Ethan Gruckenmeyer was outstanding throwing the football, very efficient. It was his best game throwing the football, so that you could see where Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator, former KU offensive coordinator, felt confident enough finally to let Ethan Gruckenmeyer throw the football. And I think with what Indiana presented in that game, they knew they were going to have to a little bit because Indiana was pretty solid.
But if you're Nebraska, you're saying, please.
Oh, yeah.
Please do that.
And you saw that with Michigan State last week.
Yeah.
He went back to just absolutely minimizing in the passing game and leaning on the running game. So this is going to be a Penn State team that is going to run first and then hopefully open some stuff up with play action, but also knowing that they're still working with a really young quarterback.
Which is why 2nd and 11 or 2nd and 12 feels as big as 2nd and 16, 2nd and 3rd and 16, 3rd and 14 is against any opponent Nebraska's faced this year.
And the same can be said about what Nebraska's going to do offensively, because even though you are more of a one-dimensional team when it comes to your running back allotment as opposed to 2 guys for Penn State, you now have TJ Lateef's legs to use, which you wouldn't have with Dylan Raiola. So this is where I'm really interested. I mentioned Kotelnicki for Penn State, but Dana Holgorsen, I was still so impressed with the game plan that they had against UCLA, working to not only Lateef's strengths, but this offense's strengths to have the most efficient game that we've seen this offense have. And now you had a week to really process all of that and another week to put everything in place for this Saturday night's contest. What Dana Holgorsen and TJ Lateef have communicated on to have this offense being as efficient as it possibly can be. Now, I don't think any of us expect for it to look, and at times against UCLA, it just looked so in sync. There are going to be moments in this game that Penn State disrupts this offense because they're that good on that side of the football. But you think about what you just said about the down and distance on the Penn State side and the Grutkemeyer side. I think equally as important, if not more important, for Nebraska and TJ Lateef, because if he's getting in those 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 6 or longer, then it's going to be interesting. Now, I'm not saying TJ Lateef can't throw the football. I don't want to label him as a run-first type quarterback. He can throw the ball and he can do so, but you want him in those situations where you're lining up 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. You know that there's a potential that they could run the football to get a first down, but Lateef, you can roll that pocket out, allow him either RPO or having that pass first and then just tuck it and run option. That all of a sudden puts a defense a lot more honest, a lot more on their heels. That's what I want to see if they can get themselves in those situations as well.
The other thing I'm interested in too, Nebraska, it's almost not worth mentioning. You'd say that Nebraska, you feel good about Nebraska coming off a bye, but it's been back and forth a little bit for Matt Rule off a bye at Nebraska. You got the win over Michigan State earlier this year. I mean, it was good. It was a win.
Good start,
but
sloppy middle, good finish.
You had some weird moments in that one.
You bookended solid.
Think back to a couple of years, or last year, you lost to Indiana horribly off the bye. I'm trying to remember 2023 where the byes were at and how things came together that year. But he's about 500 off of byes.
I think they came
17-9 win over Northwestern.
They beat Northwestern. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like, there's not a whole lot of like strong feelings either way. So I'll be interested. Like that's the next chapter in that narrative to see how things develop there. How did Nebraska maximize its time over the last week? And this is different too, right? Like even than 2 or 3 years ago, where you had limits on your coaching staff and how many different guys could coach whatever positions. You had to, like 2 or 3 years ago, Dana Holgorsen would have had to go out and recruit this past weekend, which he did not have to do.
Yep.
So, and it's not like to say that Penn State isn't in a similar position, but how does that alter things, right? Right. So I'm excited to see that, and nobody feels good off of a bye if you just go out there and lay an absolute egg. So that will certainly be a narrative to watch going forward into the next week. If Nebraska doesn't perform well, people will talk about 56-7 loss to Indiana off the bye. There's not enough wins, I think, for people to create a narrative that Matt Rule is great off of a bye either. But especially if they lose, keep track of that because I think that'll come up.
Yeah. Emmett Johnson, as we know, and we're going to get to Brian Christopherson here in just a moment. Emmett Johnson, as we know, has had just a huge week with the Heisman Trophy conversation. He's a semifinalist for the Doak Walker Award, nation's best running back. There's a lot of momentum carried in. And I love what EJ had to say on Tuesday where, I mean, not surprised. He's been a team first, me second type guy. But thinking again of those things coming out of the bye week, for a guy who's in the spotlight for something like that due to his performance and knowing that he's going to be a marked man in this game. But I just feel like he's one of those guys.
But why would you change if you were him, right? Like,
and you're not. And he's had that chip on his shoulder.
That's how he got here.
Yeah,
I love that. He got here by being team first.
Yeah.
Right? Like
he's put in the work.
All the things that he did to get to the position that he's in now, where he's likely an NFL draft pick in this upcoming April, that's all because of the things that he did from the moment that he got here, where he worked and worked and worked just to have the opportunity to have a year like he's having right now. And it's paid off for him. I mean, it's going to make him a lot of money.
When he's talked about the way that he is right now, he's quick to remind folks that it is about the team. But the one thing that I liked what he had to say is, and we saw this even in that Michigan game going into it, where teams want to build up these defenses that are going to really be after him. He gives them the credit that they deserve, but he quickly goes back to the confidence that he has with the game plan that they'll have. When it comes to his focus, and it's going to be paramount in this game, but also this is where that bye week, in my opinion, comes into such a benefit for Nebraska. Not only that offensive line and staying as healthy as they can be.
He gets to rest up.
He gets to rest up because that workload is pretty significant. And Dana Holgorsen even mentioned they weren't sure what to expect out of that workload.
He's younger, but you're right. Everybody is really treating running backs generally with kid gloves now.
But I
wonder too, if we think about like the way that we think about Luke Reimer and Nick Henrich right now, I wonder, and it'll depend on obviously Nebraska's success, but I wonder if we'll think about Emmett Johnson in a very, very similar way 2 or 3 years down the road. For Nebraska to get to 10 wins, you're going to have guys like this in the middle too, not just the guys that were there being examples, leading the way for this team, guys that you look back on as setting the foundation when we're winning 3 to 5 games. You're going to need guys to set that next level right after that. Whatever you want to say beyond foundation. I know we only really talk about foundation, but whatever that second level is, to lay up the structure of the house or whatever to get to that next level. If Nebraska gets there, I think we'll look back at Emmett Johnson in a very, very similar way. And maybe Dylan Raiola in the event that he's back with the team in his junior season as a guy that, look, yes, did he get Nebraska to 9-10 wins? And I know I'm kind of moving the goalposts a little bit here maybe about how collectively the fan base looked at the coming Messiah in Dylan Raiola. But you're going to need guys to say, look, all right, he helped to lay the foundation for learning how to win and getting the team to thinking that 7 or 8 is the floor. And then you'll look forward to what could come beyond. But, that's the type of guy that Emmett Johnson is. And I hope that the work that he's putting in now to help build up the culture goes forward into the future of the program. So.
And how about that running back position, too, of trying to shift focus on, hey, you can succeed and you can be a part of those honors, those accolades at Nebraska, which we've always talked about. Nebraska needs to find elite running backs. EJ has worked himself into that. Really give EJ Barthel a lot of credit too for a guy that we question, is he being effective with his running backs? I mean, look what they've been able to do. So I think that also plays into the future, not only this program, but also putting in that type of attention to that running back position. For sure. Nebraska's going to try to get those types of dudes going forward. All right, before we talk to Brian Christopherson, I want to ask you the worst holiday gift you ever got.
I don't remember.
Anybody ever get you a tie or socks and you're supposed to be excited about that?
No,
okay.
Not really.
Well,
most people have done well by me, and by the time they gave me clothes, I was looking forward to them.
What if I presented you with a box that had something like, I don't know, USDA certified
that wouldn't
steaks, juicy burgers?
Definitely not in that category.
Okay,
no.
yeah.
Exactly.
That would be top 5.
That would be
gift,
in the,
right?
wow, this is exciting. How did you keep it cold for so long?
Wow, there's so many ways.
You had to have wrapped it last night.
So many things I want to tell you about that question you just asked, because it's our friends at Omaha Steaks. Yeah. Don't be the one who gives the bad gift, the one you're like, oh, thanks, and you roll your eyes. Be the one you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah, like a Visa gift card. And
there's no thought that goes, you can't eat that.
Yeah, no, well, yeah.
Wait, okay, anyway. But Omaha Steaks, look, they're going to make the gift giving that much easier for you. All you got to do is just go to omahasteaks.com, and you can select from all of those boxes, because if you're going to open up that box, whether it's at a Christmas party with your company, whether it's at a Christmas party with your friends or your family, they open up that box and they see the variety of everything that is top choice and guaranteed to satisfy, or you get money back on it. Hey, look, Omaha Steaks has got you covered. You will be number one when it comes to gift giving.
Hey, we've got a way for you to knock off some dollars off of your next purchase from Omaha Steaks, which we hope is very soon. Of course, right now you got the Sizzle All the Way sale going on, 50% off site-wide on all sorts of items there at omahasteaks.com. But for an extra $35 off, use the promo code HUDDLE at checkout. Terms apply, and you can see the site for details. Once again, $35 off. With the promo code HUDDLE at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. Again, that's omahasteaks.com, code HUDDLE.
All right, excited to talk not only a little football, but also some basketball. Huge victory for the Nebraska men's basketball team out there in Sioux Falls, South Dakota on Sunday against Oklahoma. And the guy who covers both football and basketball on a return appearance here on the Husker Huddle is Brian Christopherson of Husker 24/7 Sports. We're going to be telling everyone, by the way, about our date coming up in December where we've got the whole gang back at Cross Train. We'll wait, though. But, BC, great to have you back. And this is, again, got to be your favorite time of the year where both of the beats collide. And you have no life right now.
That's good though. I don't have a life anyway usually, Nick. So that's fine. This is par for the course. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I love when the two intersect. It's a beautiful month and a half. I think my wife likes when I get out of the house too, to be honest.
It's understandable too, and that with all due respect too, obviously. Let's start football and
okay.
I know you guys are going to be making your way down to State College and checking out that whole scene, this environment, and it's been well documented with Nebraska between talking about the point spread for the Huskers and Nittany Lions this Saturday to a Penn State team that, despite having their hearts ripped out against Indiana and what has just been an overall disappointing season, they still got a lot in the tank that they're at least showing right now, and I'm sure they're going to have that on display Saturday night. I know they're not a ranked team, BC, but to me, this feels like if Nebraska is able to go to Beaver Stadium, get a victory under the lights out there at State College, that at least the optics would have a similar feeling, in my opinion, of knocking off a top 25 team, because I think this roster is a top 25 roster. Are you in the same mindset there if Nebraska could actually pull this off?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this would be Nebraska's best win of the year. Pretty easily, actually, which is saying something considering Penn State's 4-6 record. But for the reasons you laid out is why I think that. I think it's a very tough place to play at night, obviously. I don't think they've mailed it in. Like, for the last few weeks, Husker fans have sort of been tracking Penn State, and I think sort of with that thought, like, maybe they're not even going to care by the time Nebraska gets there. Well, I mean, if you look at the last couple of weeks, taking Indiana to the wire, where Indiana really had to make some of the best plays of its season to get out of there by the skin of its teeth with the win. And then, you know, they really dominated that fourth quarter, Penn State did at Michigan State last week. So give them credit, give Terry Smith, their interim coach credit, because he's got those guys still going after it, and they can be bowl eligible, and that means something to some guys on that roster. It's senior night there. It'll be a tough environment, and the odds makers obviously think so too, as they have Penn State like a 9 to 10 point favorite.
BC, is there enough meat on the bone against these last two defenses that Nebraska will face between Penn State and Iowa for Emmett Johnson to make a serious Heisman semifinalist push?
I honestly don't think so. I mean, I guess if you never say never, like if he has a Melvin Gordon game, sorry for bringing that up, but you know, if he does like something unbelievable where it's like 300 yards and then 175 the next week, anything could happen. I just think it's so tough when your name sort of surfaces beyond our bubble this late in the year. Like, we've all known about Emmett, and I think even here it took us like a month or so into the season until we were recognizing like how really at such a high clip he was playing. And now other people are just catching up to it. So I think it's a long shot. That said, I think he could go secure like first team all Big Ten and some things like that and make sure you're one of the 3 finalists for the Doak Walker. And I just think name recognition, it's sort of like politics. So like if your name hasn't been out there enough for people who are voting on it for like a full year, it's sometimes difficult to win those things. And I think like Jeremiah Love, for instance, probably has just more buzz around him, even though their numbers are very similar. And even though Emmett Johnson actually has a higher percentage of yardage for Nebraska than Love does for Notre Dame. So he can be in the conversation, and it's deserved. I just don't think he's going to be able to pull it off.
Talking to Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7 Sports here on the Husker Huddle podcast. If you look at what TJ Lateef was able to accomplish against UCLA, and we all were very impressed, you get that week off, you have a chance to really build even on that momentum that you had at UCLA and what is going to be a true road test. From an anticipation standpoint and that offensive efficiency that we saw between Dana Holgorsen, TJ Lateef, and the rest of that offense, what's your expectation level of that type of efficiency against this Penn State defense?
Well, I don't think it's going to come as easy probably as he made it look out there against UCLA. I think Penn State probably has a little bit more material, but I'm not discounting that he's going to go play well. The biggest question to me is if he can have that poise in the noise sort of deal where, you guys were with me outside of the practice the other day. You could hear how loud they were pumping it in. And I honestly don't know how fired up that crowd's going to be, but it's a big stadium, and they'll make a lot of noise if things are going their way early on. And so the biggest factor to me is if he can avoid like that miscommunication play or something where there's just a massive breakdown that leads to a turnover or something that really cost you. That's what impressed me so much about how he played at UCLA was just his composure, and the ball was never really in danger, it didn't feel like. And so that's the big thing. Can you do that again against a team that I do think will probably get a better pass rush on you? And can he spin out of it a couple times and turn those plays into, I guess you would say, almost schoolyard plays for Nebraska where it looks bad at first, but then he runs for 12 yards and moves the chains? I think he's capable of that. It's just how many times can he do it, or can he do it in this sort of setting?
BC, what do you make of what we saw, or what we rather heard from Troy Dannon earlier this week during his AD show about some of the future of things like the blackout, the volleyball reseat, and some of the other topics he discussed on his monthly radio show this week?
Yeah, I think first off, the blackout is something that just should be an annual thing. I'm glad they see it that way because it was a massive success. It was huge with recruits. I think fans loved it. And I don't think – I know as much as we love tradition here in Nebraska, there is a connection with the black shirts and sort of that idea. And he talked even about putting the skull and crossbones like on the field. And I think that'd be a good idea. And it sounds like they might do something where they make it a cause game where it benefits something towards farm and agriculture. And so you're playing in your roots. So I think it's going to be a really cool concept if you just keep it going. Maybe change up the uniforms a little bit every year, but a different kind of black uniform. So that's cool. As for the reseat, I know people are going to be disappointed in some places, like when they get moved around. I think he makes good points as to why it's necessary in this day and age, and how much of a revenue generator like your stadium has to be, and you have to get out of this. Like Nebraska is let's talk football. That stadium's so big, as he said, that should be producing a lot of finances for you. And right now they're probably only reaching like 50%, as he said, of what they should be getting. So I think updating some stuff is going to help with that. I think for the volleyball reseat, something that's notable, Grant, is everybody's going to at least keep us seat in the building. That I think that's good that they were able to pull that off, and that's not always done. So that's something that people should at least appreciate about it.
BC, I want to talk a little hoops here too while we have you. And it's hard to get overly juiced up about games in non-conference games and in November, but that was the first real test, even though it was definitely a pro-Husker crowd. I know you were out there at the Sanford Pentagon up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, but Nebraska taking on Oklahoma. It was a high-level basketball game, a lot of offense in this one, and a great win for Fred Hoiberg and this team. But I want to get into some of the preseason expectation with new personnel, and mainly Price Sanford. We knew he was going to be a factor with this team. His role, I don't know if I knew exactly what it would look like early on, but the success that he's having out of the gate and especially in the first biggest test. How surprised are you with the way he's really just hit the ground running in this Fred Hoiberg system?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised, but I'm happy for him that he's confirming what he thought his game was about, that he's an all-around player. Like, he's not just a guy who has to hang out behind the arc and, snipe 4 or 5 threes per game, and that's it. Not that that's not useful too, but like in that game Saturday, he hits 4 shots behind the arc, but within the first 5 minutes, he also takes it to the hole and dunks it. And he had like 3 of those plays where he got to the basket downhill, had a nice reverse layup finish, plus and one, that gave him the lead with about 11 minutes left. He just sort of did it all, and I think, he always knew as like a high school recruit that he could really thrive in the offensive system that Hoiberg has. It was just a matter of, you thought at one point they'd never connect together and have that opportunity. I think they're kind of made for each other, though, the coach and player there. They sort of what Hoiberg wants to do feeds well into Sanford's game and vice versa. So that's big. And then obviously Rink. I mean, I think we maybe could possibly underestimated even how big a deal it was to not have him last year. We knew it mattered, but there's a reason why Big Ten coaches voted him third team all-conference 2 years ago, and that was with a Rink with a knee that wasn't 100%. He had that surgery in December that year, and so I think we're seeing him more healthy, and he just spaces the floor and is such a facilitator and helps everyone around him, including Price, and so I think all those guys are digging just playing with him.
BC, what do you make of Nebraska's depth and the job that the coaching staff has done to create that depth? I immediately, I guess you don't necessarily call Sam Hoiberg a depth piece, but that's a guy that has improved remarkably over the course of his time here and is contributing in a big way. Cale Jacobson is another, a guy who goes from being a walk-on to having some of the bigger moments and bigger plays in that win this past weekend. What do you make of Nebraska's depth and how they've done building up guys like Jacobson and a Hoiberg?
Yeah, I mean, I think they do have good depth. They still have to prove it a little bit because, for instance, like right now, Oogie, I'm just going to call him Oogie. You know who I'm talking about. Oogie's got the back injury that he's been working back from, and so they're not as deep at the 5 spot. But that's where like a guy like Cale Jacobson, who you mentioned, matters so much because Cale can play 1 through 5 on the floor. And he can do it without you feeling like Nebraska's just at a complete disadvantage because he's so basketball savvy. And he's just like one of those guys. It would be a disservice to say he has like the YMCA game. You like want to go to that like he has the old man YMCA game. I think what it is like when he has the ball, he's just so in control, though. You see it like slow down. You can see it processing in his mind. Like he's a one step ahead of where everyone else is. He was one of the biggest factors Saturday night. And so he's going to be big, and Sam's got to play, 25 minutes or so each night too, because he's a good defender. And I know sometimes people will knock him because he's not the biggest scorer and stuff like that. But he has taken out some really good guards when last couple of years they've won some big games in conference play because he's been a complete disruption defensively to guys. And so he definitely has an important role. I'm just curious, like, how it kind of shakes out with a couple guys when, like, Oogie comes back. Is Jared Garcia going to enter into the picture more? Because at the end of that game Saturday, they did kind of bring it down to, like, 6 guys, like, for the most of the second half. So they kind of rode with your main characters. I'm curious, like, what that looks like as we go through into January in conference play. But this is a big weekend. They play 2 games, and if they lose one, okay, but this is one where you don't want to give away 2 right after you had a high point like that win over Oklahoma.
BC, what's Bear K's offensive ceiling, in your opinion?
I thought that was the best game I've seen him play maybe on Saturday. And so it's a really good question. It's timely because it's tricky to answer because if I'm honest, I've been down on it, like what it could be, because I just haven't trusted his long-range game. And I think he does a lot of little stuff that is important to this team. And his plus minus sometimes when they play well is really good. Like he'll always have one of the best plus minuses on the squad. But I'd be lying to you if I said he let one go like a few minutes into the second half Saturday, and I was like, oh no, and then he made it. And I could tell the whole crowd was like that. It was one of those reactions where the tone shifted a little bit in the reaction as the shot was in the air. So hopefully there's more in store of that. That's the beauty of sports, right? Like sometimes people think they have the book on somebody, and then they show, no, I've worked on my game a lot, and we've heard that he shoots it really well behind the scenes. And so if he can become at least a threat there and knows when to utilize it and when to hold back, that's a big deal when the other side has to respect all 5 guys that they could make that shot. But just restraint is good sometimes too.
BC, does Nebraska have enough defensively to slow down the run in Happy Valley on Saturday?
Man, that's the big question the last 2 games. And I think John Butler is right in a sense that, like, he knows what the knock is on his defense. Like, there's sort of been this, he called it low-hanging fruit. And I get what he's saying. Like, it's sort of an easy thing. Like, man, these guys stink against the run. There's kind of this buildup of it. And I don't think it's been that bad because I think you give something to get in this game. And they've given up some things, but they've also gotten some things, like USC, for instance. That was a game where right afterward, everybody's like, man, they gave up 202 yards and all that, right, for the next couple of days. How could you do that? But then you kind of look at the stats. You're like, you had to, probably give up something to have a performance like where they actually played one of the best games against USC that anybody's played, to hold them to that point total and that yardage total. So I think they can hold up. The question is, can you avoid those 1 or 2 plays where the dam breaks and someone takes a bad angle and it's a 55-yarder that just kills you? Like, that's the big question. You're always worried about that with this group. I don't think this QB's as much of a runner, and so I think that helps them out. But they've really got to be dialed in at the second and third levels with their angles and their fits and all that to just make Penn State drive that thing 15 plays if they have to. This is going to be a low-possession game. And so as long as you don't give them that one possession where it's like 3 plays, 75 yards because of that run, I think Nebraska will be there till the end.
Do you want to? I know I know you guys do your predictions usually on a Thursday. This will come out Thursday afternoon. Do you want to go out and say
Sure.
what you think is going to happen Saturday night under the lights at Beaver Stadium?
I picked Penn State to win it, 22-17. I think it's one of the toughest games Nebraska's had all year. Even though their record is what it is, I respect their talent. I don't think they've folded yet, and I suspect they're going to give Nebraska its best game. I do think Nebraska will be there with 5 minutes left. It's just a matter, like you were saying in your one question, and I think it's fair. This is not a ranked team. It's not that. I don't want to make Penn State out to be more than they are, but I think it'd be a great win, like if they pulled that thing off. And so that's why I guess I give the respect of Penn State having the home field advantage, and we'll pick them not to cover, but to win the game. You're asking a lot to go in there and win with a guy starting his second game at QB, as much as we liked how TJ played at UCLA. And so that's where I probably have trouble going the full distance and saying Huskers. But I think Nebraska will go and play well. It's just a matter of, can they go like plus in turnovers and maybe make one special teams play to kind of tip it and make my prediction the wrong one.
BC, we appreciate you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Again, great stuff from Brian Christopherson of Husker 24/7 Sports. Speaking of Brian Christopherson, Michael Bruns, and our good friend Mike Schaefer, we are happy, and also Cross Train Brewing in La Vista. And you as well. And me, yes. We are excited to tell you the date.
No, not literally you, the listener. You.
Oh, yeah, you. More important. Okay, yeah, more importantly,
so
you. It's all about me. Although I try to make it about you. Okay,
anyway, back
weird.
to the endorsement.
Or an exciting announcement that in December, we're going to be having our next Huskers Live on Tap. We can give you a date on that, too. It's going to be Tuesday, December 16th. And if you're doing the adding up the days, figuring out the schedule there, yes, that is the Tuesday. That would just be a couple days before
the Final Four,
the national championship, Final Four volleyball in Kansas City. So we will be doing that Tuesday. We'll obviously have a little volleyball conversation going on at Cross Train Brewing in La Vista. We look forward to that. And, what better way to enjoy just great, hard-hitting sports talk of Husker football, Husker volleyball, and basketball than enjoying an ice-cold Cornhusker Crusher, the official craft beer of the Huskers. So
Great
we'll be
idea.
enjoying that. And, of course, they have some great seasonal beers.
Yep.
Anything you really are looking for when it comes to a craft beer, you're going to get at Cross Train. Our friends do it better than anybody. We want to see you out there Tuesday, December 16th from 5 to 7. It is our second Huskers Live on Tap with Grant, myself, Mike Schaefer, Brian Christopherson, who you just heard from, and Michael Brunts. We look forward to that one out there at Cross Train. It is time to get to our Week 16 mailbag. And, of course, if you want to join in on this, we got just, a couple shows before the end of the year. Email us, huskerhuddle@myboomerradio.com. That's huskerhuddle@myboomerradio.com. PB from the O kicks us off as he does pretty much every week now. And he's got 2 questions, so you got to bear with us here. All right. And he likes to get into the numbers, the specifics of it. Despite Nebraska being 7-3 and Penn State 4-6, the Nittany Lions are a nearly double-digit favorite at home. That's where the line started anyway. Is that line fair, or is there a different line that would make more sense based on what you both are seeing week to week? A lot of people are getting hung up on the line.
I know it's a big narrative this week, and we've already talked about it to some extent, but I would say I think I would have maybe landed at Penn State 4.5, something like that.
I was
That's where I would have been.
I was a little higher. I wasn't 10.5 where it opened. Now at 9.5 as we're recording this, might go down even more. But yeah, I was looking at anywhere between 6 and 7, and there's a power ranking system that goes into these as well. And I think it did have Penn State as about a touchdown. You got to look at that night game. This is what I asked earlier too, and this is why I think that number elevates just a bit. Is there are then the external factors of not only playing at Beaver Stadium, but also at night.
Vegas is still trying to figure out what TJ Lateef is. They have one full real game of his tape. So that's part of the evaluation. You're obviously counting in the fact that Penn State has run it as much as they have over the last 3 weeks. Nebraska has been very susceptible against the run this year. So all of those things play into it. I was not expecting 10 to start. I thought that was crazy.
You and I both agreed, though, they wouldn't be favored. We both agreed that, and we've thought that the entire way, that they would be a dog no matter what happened, even last week for Penn State.
I mean, I thought, and we'll see how the Iowa thing develops. I'm sure it depends a lot on how Nebraska fares against Penn State this week and how Iowa fares against Michigan State. But I thought there was a chance that Nebraska was a home dog against Iowa, too. I still think that chance still exists.
I would lean that way right now. And I'll throw this in there again, if just going back to what you said about the quarterback situation for both of these teams. You do have a redshirt freshman in Ethan Grunkemeyer, who I mentioned earlier, making his 5th start. So there's a little bit more on him as opposed to TJ Lateef, not only making his 2nd start, but a true road environment compared to what he had out in LA. So there are a lot of factors into this. But again, I do think some people are overlooking the night game factor at Beaver Stadium, senior night. So there's some external things that I think at least played into that initial number. It'll be interesting to see by kikoff, or at least going into Saturday afternoon,
where
that
finishes.
line, where that line ultimately winds up. In Katron Allen's 2 games with more than 25 carries, he's accounted for an average of 163 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. PB from the O doing his homework. Similarly, Emmett Johnson has had 3 games with more than 25 carries and has accounted for 183 all-purpose yards and 6 touchdowns. Should we expect a limited possession, old-school running game this week?
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say, short answer, absolutely.
Yes. Look, I
Big
think
Ten football.
It's pretty clear Penn State, and I wouldn't be either. I mean, they're far less comfortable throwing the football now with Grunkemeyer than they were with Aller. And I wouldn't have really leaned into Aller very much throwing the ball either.
Yeah.
So you know that. Nebraska is maybe the variable here. Penn State's defense has struggled against the run at a couple of different points this year. How involved do you get? How much do you trust TJ Lateef in an environment that is obviously very, very different than the one that he played in 2 weeks ago? That factors into it. But you come back to the fact that both these teams really over the last 3 weeks have come to the same realization that we are run first. And you've got 2 guys in the Penn State backfield that can be very, very dynamic, and you have one for Nebraska, and Emmett Johnson, who's obviously very much in the running for all the awards. So, it's pretty clear based off of personnel and team strengths and trends where this game is going to go. And that's why, I look at turnovers being so critical this week, just like they were a couple of weeks ago for Nebraska. It's going to come down to, can you take care of the football? I mean, what swung the game in Pasadena? It was the 4th down stop that Nebraska had and then immediately turned around and scored on the next drive. That was the difference in the game. That's where Nebraska grabbed a full stranglehold on the game, and they didn't let go. They finished. You're going to need to do something similar here. You're going to need to take care of the football, and you're going to have to come up with a key stop or two to set up your offense with a short field.
I think there's a big part of, again, what the quarterbacks do and don't do, which is interesting, too, because Gruckemeyer does more what Dylan Raiola did, and T.J. Lateef does more what Drew Aller did. And so you do have sort of that reverse roles when it comes to maybe the strengths of these quarterbacks. I think it's going to come down to who is going to be able to make that throw when they need to, because there's going to be some third down and unmanageable and third and long situations where these quarterbacks are going to have to make some throws. And this is where you do start to factor in the experience level of Gruckemeyer when he got his first start on the road against Iowa compared to T.J. Lateef getting his first start on the road at UCLA too. How are these guys adapting to not only those surroundings of the defenses and those defensive coordinators? Because again, Gruckemeyer had a Phil Parker defensive coordinator really scheming against him. In this game, T.J. Lateef is going to have a very experienced Jim Knowles scheming against him as well. So I think those throws are going to be very, very key. But when it comes down to how these teams have identified themselves, and especially Penn State having success as of late, they got a little bit away from that running the ball identity and maybe a little bit with Drew Aller when he got injured and wanted to work to Gruckemeyer's strengths. But what we're seeing is them realizing they've got between Allen and Singleton 2 very good, capable running backs, so they don't need to just lean on one or the other.
Yep.
They can have success that way. That's how they're going to get points. But also Nebraska knows the same thing. But it's not just Emmett Johnson. You mentioned they just have one guy. Well, this is where T.J. Lateef can help you with his legs too, an element in the offense that Nebraska did not have with Dylan Raiola. So again, back to the original short answer of yes, but that's why, yes, you're going to see a lot, I think, limited, more of a Big Ten type of game.
For sure.
That we're
Nebraska has to stay on schedule. I mean, that's the other big piece of what they're able to do that got a good sort of feel and a good sense of comfortability with T.J. Lateef from the start, and Nebraska basically stayed on schedule the whole game. I mean, they faced very, very few third and longs. That'll be very, very important again this week.
So efficient. That offense was so efficient against UCLA. It's going to be absolutely key again against Penn State. Nebraska is going to be there at the end. Craig wraps us up with this question back to what I think kind of leads into what we were just talking about. And that says, how important is having the bye week before the game for T.J. Lateef? And Grant, I could go both ways on this one as far as I could see the benefit of being able to take that success from UCLA and then being able to apply it the following week in another game plan. But I also like the idea, knowing that you're going to have a much more difficult environment than he had and a tougher defense than what UCLA brought, that you do have an opportunity to look at film and take a little extra time of looking at that film, looking at the things that T.J. Lateef did well in that game. And there were, as much good as he did, there were some things that I'm sure he'd like to have back and maybe a little bit of an opportunity to expand that game plan against this Penn State defense, because I think you just can't be so predictable. Not saying they were, but that efficiency that you saw with Nebraska's game plan against UCLA, it's going to be tested against this Penn State team. So I don't mind having that extra week of preparation for the young guy.
Look, I mean, anytime you get extra time, that's a good thing. I don't feel like this bye week lends itself any more to breaking up his momentum than it does, giving him a chance to come down from where he was before. He's not going to be feeling himself so much after beating mighty UCLA that, he goes into this week and he second guesses Penn State. So he gets some time, and Nebraska collectively gets some time to reflect and prepare for what you have coming up this week. So I think obviously it's a really, really important thing for T.J. Lateef, and I'll be very interested to see. I mean, we'll see the fruits of his work, his labor over the course of that bye week and see how it pays off this week.
And actually, maybe the most important part of why the bye week is important for T.J. Lateef is because the guys that are blocking for him are getting healthy. And think of that interior group, those guys having that extra time to get their bodies right. That first bye week is more, okay, let's take a look at what we have done right and the things that we need to work on. Let's tighten those up. This bye week serves as those guys that have been playing this entire season, especially guys in the trenches, getting healthy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, those guys being as healthy as they can, it's going to benefit TJ Lateef. Speaking of those guys in the trenches, it's been a very solid season for Elijiah Jeudy on the defensive side. My man Grant Hansen had a chance to catch up with him this week. Give this a watch and listen.
Folks, welcome back. It's Huskers All Access, brought to you by Access Bank, here for a reason. Grant Hansen here alongside Nebraska defensive lineman Elijiah Jeudy. Elijiah, how did you spend the bye week?
I really spent with my wife. We sent Coda home with his grandparents so he can spend some time with them. So really, the bye week just been dates and chilling in the house. So that's all.
It's got to be pretty nice.
No, it is. It was quiet, a little too quiet for my comfort, but I mean, we had a good time.
Now that you got back into the swing of things, how's this week been as you prepared for Penn State?
It's been great. We're coming off a great bye week. We had a great practice last week, great couple of practices, and this week we're coming off a great practice on Tuesday. So I mean, so far it's been pretty good.
This game, you're going to go up against a team. Matt Rule showed the media yesterday 50 runs last week against Michigan State. They're going to run the ball a lot. And it provides a really, really big challenge, was his point that he was making this last week, and it's a great opportunity for you guys. What's it like preparing for a team like this that has two great, talented running backs?
It's pretty hard. Like you said, they have two great running backs. We got number 10, he's explosive. 13, downhill, he's a real gritty player. We just got to live in the backfield and make it hard for them to run the ball. That's all we got to focus on this week, is just living in the backfield, getting knocked back, getting off blocks, and making sure that we're getting them down when we're in the backfield.
What's it been like watching the young bucks develop this year along that defensive line? Keanu Davis, Cade Petchock. We just got done talking to Dylan Rogers. I know he's in the jack room, but he lives around the line of scrimmage with you guys. What's it been like watching them grow this season?
I'm proud of them. They've been putting in the work all year, all week, definitely all season, and it's showing up on field. Cade has 2 sacks, I believe, 2 sacks, right? Dylan Rogers came into the game, his first.
Last week was his first start.
Yeah, first start. Yeah, okay, his first start last week. He did a great job. The hat was on his head. He made some plays. He was able to affect the quarterback. So, I mean, they're doing great.
What do you have any words of wisdom that you've imparted on them this season? Any advice you've given?
Yeah, just don't get complacent. Everything might be good now, but later on down the road, there's going to be some type of roadblock that you're going to have to get through, and it's just not to get complacent. Don't settle for less.
You've got to experience quite a few home night game environments this year. Big game, obviously, against USC earlier. Now you get to be the road team on the road at night against a quality opponent with a great nighttime environment. What's it going to be like for you on the other side of it from the USC game that you had earlier this month?
I love it either way, whether we're home or away. I love the boos, I love the cheers. So, I mean, we're going to be the most hated team in PA at the time. So we just got to take that and use that as motivation.
How excited are you to go home?
I'm real excited. I have a lot of family members that's coming out. They got their tickets ready. I got family and friends that bought the tickets. They're taking that drive down there to come see me. So, I mean, we got to put on the show not just for them, but for all our families that's coming out to watch us too.
What's your favorite place to eat in Pennsylvania?
That's a great question. All right, for example, like what are you talking about? Cheesesteaks?
Anything.
Really, I go to a place called Goo. It's a Caribbean, it's a Haitian restaurant, so that's where I mainly go when I go home.
And then, lastly, about Pennsylvania, is there any hidden gems from the area, whether it's things to do? We just touched on things to eat, but stuff like, oh, this is critical. Like, I remember my childhood memories. I love going to this place or doing this thing in Pennsylvania.
I think the most critical memory was the Philadelphia Zoo. As a kid, I used to really enjoy going to the Philadelphia Zoo, so I think that's one place that should be visited.
Well, he's Elijiah Jeudy, defensive lineman for Nebraska. Thanks, Elijiah, for the time. Good luck this week against Penn State.
Good stuff there with Grant and Elijiah Jeudy there. And Elijiah Jeudy, cool story. And
happy for him.
We were talking afterwards, too, about some of the Philly steak places. And he gave us
a couple different
advice,
recs,
but you know what? Maybe when we have more time, we'll let you
someday
know. I can say in State College, if folks are making their way out there, there is a pretty decent place in State College that I've actually experienced. It's called Ernie's. Famous Ernie's. It's right in their main entertainment bar and restaurant district out there in State College, but it's pretty darn good. So you're welcome. There you go. All right, time to take a look at some college football games this weekend. Before we get to the Nebraska-Penn State game, we're going to go to the SEC. Missouri taking on Oklahoma out in Norman. The now 8th-ranked Sooners, after what they pulled off against Alabama, and I did not think that they would be able to do that against the Crimson Tide. John Mateer and this Oklahoma offense looked to be right again.
Think about that, too.
Looked good, too.
A lot of the attention, we had the two teams that came over from the Big 12 in Texas and Oklahoma taking on sort of the two perennial, or at least over the last 10 years, SEC powers in Georgia and Alabama. And a lot of the thought was, well, would Texas be able to take care and upset Georgia and put itself right back into the college football playoff conversation? There really wasn't a lot of attention on Oklahoma last week in terms of, at least relative to where people were at with Texas. And all of a sudden, it's actually that Big 12 team that was floundering a year ago that came up with one of its biggest wins over the last 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, a huge win. By the way, this game, the line started at 9.5 in favor of Oklahoma. It's now down to 7.5 in favor of Oklahoma at home. The old Big 8, I wouldn't say rivals, but old Big 8 opponents now, Big 12 then, or Big 8, Big 12, now SEC. You know, I still like Oklahoma in this one. I think this is another great opportunity for them to capitalize off of what they've done. But more importantly, I think we're seeing a healthy Mateer, and I think that's huge for this offense.
That is a huge
forward.
Factor, and it's something I overlooked. I mean, I'll be honest.
I think I'll give OU the cover in this one, too. I think they win this one by a score of 28-20. Over the Missouri Tigers, covering by that 0.5 point right there.
So we've talked a little bit about SEC bias over the last couple of weeks. Missouri is 7-3 and is ranked. Tennessee is 7-3 and is ranked. And then there's another SEC team that's that's it, because there are three. It's a graphic that was floating around this week. Nebraska is 7-3, Louisville is 7-3. And there's one other 7-3 team I'm forgetting, but Tennessee and Missouri are the two ones that are ranked, despite the other three teams that are unranked having much better metrics overall. Anyway, Missouri does not deserve to be in the top 25. This is where I was going with this.
Okay.
And I like Oklahoma big in this one. You're right about Mateer. We just touched on that. The quarterback just makes such a huge difference. And you pair that with the Venables defense. It took some time to mature and solidify. But man, you really love how that unit is playing right now.
That was impressive what they did against Alabama.
That travels. That will translate come college football playoff time, which it seems clear at this point that they're going to be a factor and a player in. So I like Oklahoma big.
Top 15 game in the Big Ten. It'll feature USC, 15th ranked, traveling to Oregon, who comes in at number 7 in the college football playoff rankings that were unveiled on Tuesday. Oregon hosting this one as what opened at an 8.5 spread. It is now ballooned just a bit to 9.5 in favor of the Ducks. Look, USC, give them credit for being able to kind of out Iowa there in the second half.
Despite a really horrendous start.
Yeah, it was a bad start. The weather was obviously
they overcame
an issue.
that.
Yeah, they did. And so I give USC a lot of credit to be able to kind of punch a couple of holes through that Iowa defense.
For sure.
I think SC is going to come in with a lot of momentum, and that was a physical game. That's a good thing for SC going up against this very physical Dan Lanning Oregon defense as well. I don't think Oregon covers this one, but I do think Oregon wins this game. I'm going to take the Ducks to hold on by a score of 24-20, but they do not cover in this one.
Well, you know who else out Iowa to Iowa a couple of weeks ago? Oregon did. Iowa City.
And bad weather, too.
And so this is the two last teams to play Iowa Bowl.
Yep.
Or maybe the biggest game of the week.
So you were challenged physically.
Either way you want to talk through it. Look, 2 weeks ago we talked about Oregon. I feel like, again, of all the 4 Pac-12 teams that came over to join the Big Ten, Oregon has done the best job of assimilating its style of play.
I'd agree, yeah.
And being physical on the defensive side of the ball. Yes, they still have all the uniforms and the offensive flair and the quarterback play. That certainly has been a factor over its tenure or time in the Big Ten. But I've really, really been impressed by how that defense has come along and sort of the ways that they can play with some of these Big Ten teams. I don't know if you can necessarily say that about USC yet, or certainly not UCLA, and Washington has had its moments too, but it's none of those 3 teams have been nearly as consistent with it as Oregon, and that's the type of style of play, again, that USC has struggled with. Iowa, if they even score one more time in that game, if they're able to put together one good drive in the second half, they win. And so I like Oregon to win this one. I will say Oregon covers this game.
Okay. That's where we disagree.
I think Oregon is able to win at home and cover against the Trojans. And Dan Lanning's group is really slept on in this whole conversation.
I do agree about that.
I think it's because we look at the win over Penn State, we devalue Penn State, and we overvalue, for whatever reason, losing at home to Indiana as a major detractor for this team. So they are just kind of hovering around underneath this initial top layer of cream that we look at in the sport. And I think there's a really good chance that by the time we get to December and towards the end of January and we look back and we think, what in the world are we doing not thinking that this team is one of the top 5 teams in the sport?
It's a fair point. It is. All right, Nebraska, Penn State, under the lights, Beaver Stadium, 6 p.m. kickoff, NBC. Of course, you can catch it on Boomer Radio. The pregame coverage will begin at 2 o'clock on Boomer Radio 1490 and 97.3. You can also catch it on 660 a.m. pregame coverage beginning at 5:30. And don't forget 97.7 HD3, where you can catch the game in 100,000 watts. So, Nebraska, as we mentioned, 9.5-point favorite, at least as we're recording this right now. 9.5-point dog on the road. A lot of people have been fixated on that one. So, Grant, this is how I look at it. I think what Terry Smith and this Penn State coaching staff has done in the midst of having that major distraction of having your head coach fired, that can rattle some things, that can shake things up. But I think what we've seen out of this team going all the way back to the loss to Indiana is that this team still is fighting. This team still is playing up to what we know that roster and talent on that roster is. A gritty effort against Michigan State, especially in the fourth quarter. Being at home where they understand between Nebraska and Rutgers, they've got to go 2-0 if they want to be bowl eligible. I don't know how that compares to a team that was supposed to be in the college football playoff, but they're at least showing signs of major life. They've got a two-headed monster in the backfield, which we know can be a problem. Singleton and Allen, they're good running backs. What Ethan Gruckenmeyer can do now in his 5th start, how much trust is there that when he eventually will have to throw the football in this game, they'll let him do so? Will he have opportunities in play action because the running game is effective? All of these things are things that concern me about this Penn State team, but especially under the lights. Beaver Stadium is a tough place to go in and grab a victory. For Nebraska, TJ Lateef making his 2nd start, and Emmett Johnson, who we know is RB number 1, and so much attention on him, and rightfully so. But when I think about what Nebraska is eventually going to have to do in this game, both defensively and offensively, I don't feel like they can do enough. I think this game can be back and forth. I think Nebraska, for whatever reason, I feel is going to be trying to play catch-up this entire game, and I don't love that both for this defense and for a young quarterback that is still trying to establish himself in a true road environment. So I do think Penn State gets the better of Nebraska in this one. I do think that it's a game that you'll see again, maybe a 1-score game, but I think it's where you see Penn State kind of keeping Nebraska at arm's length. I'm taking the Nittany Lions to win 28-23.
So you lose 6 in a row at one point in the year, and you start to stabilize things last week with the win over Michigan State. Next week, Penn State will play Rutgers. This barrier right here in Nebraska is the only thing that is keeping Penn State away from bowl eligibility. It's senior night, and this team will be beyond motivated.
Yep.
And it's very, very hard for me to pick Nebraska in a game like this, and in fact, I won't. I think Nebraska will cover the ballooning line that we're seeing right now. I don't think Nebraska gets blown out. I mean, this will be a 1-score game down the stretch. But I don't think the way Nebraska struggled against the run this year and the 2 backs that Penn State has, both of them are above 3,000 career rushing yards. Nick Singleton's been a little bit down this year compared to years past, but I mean,
good game against the Hoosiers.
Okay, I mean, come on. Yeah. Who cares? We know who these guys are.
Right.
And so I think ultimately that'll prove too much for Nebraska. And I think it's just hard to look at TJ Lateef. And yes, he did very, very well against UCLA. he's going to make a mistake at some point in this game. He's going to make a critical breaking mistake, and I don't know if Nebraska is going to have enough to recover from it just because of how scarce possessions are going to be, and again, how much Nebraska has struggled to limit opposing run games. So if Nebraska picks up the win, I would be incredibly, incredibly impressed. You could log it down as a major victory in terms of trying to measure progress for the team, but I don't think they get it done. Penn State wins this one. We'll say Nittany Lions get the victory. 26-17.
Okay.
Weird score.
Mine's kind of weird too, 28-23, but there you have it. Both of us have Penn State winning. When we talk to you next, it'll be a short week. It'll be Black Friday affair with the Iowa Hawkeyes. We look forward to telling you about that and all of the build-up leading up to the Old Heroes game. We'll see if Nebraska is trying to get win number 9 or win number 8. But we shall see. Always appreciate you guys checking out the podcast. Until next week, have a great weekend. Enjoy Nebraska, Penn State, and we'll talk to you on the Husker Huddle next week.